Okay, so integrating grazers, this is when the real party starts happening in your system, and when things really kick off. You've got your compatible plant guilds all set up in your orchard, things are growing, things are starting to become established, and as they increase in maturity, you kind of transition away from a system of you maintaining that system through mowing and pruning and mulching, to managing that system with grazers that can be integrated into it, and maintain the successional stage of your food forest production at a level that you want. So initially, you're kind of working on the early pioneer species, the nitrogen fixators, the nutrient accumulators, and you're kind of mowing them, mulching them, pruning them back, adding that fertility back to the soil. And you may be having them in alley crops, so you might have established these plant communities and rows in your farm system. And the grassy areas in between, you may have initially just managed by mowing, or you might have had some chicken tractors through there. But increasingly, as the tree system gains maturity, you can incorporate more free-range grazers into the system that can forage in amongst here and help control the understory growth. And they can even prune the trees, so they can be grazing the underside of the trees. And if you combine that with the training and the pruning of the trees, you can quite nicely establish a shape of height around, easy to harvest height through the pruning of the grazers and the training and the pruning of the leaders of the tree, so that you can go through and harvest your produce quite effectively. So integrating grazers is a great way to kind of gear up the system, kind of simplify it a little bit, and utilize the biological complexity better. Instead of having to use your own resources and your own energy, you can more utilize that. Or, an alternative is you can maintain these tractor systems and just tractor them through it, and then you can maintain that plant guild understory and complexity in that system. So I guess as the system becomes more established in a permaculture orchard, you can go one of two routes. So initially, you establish your nitrogen fixators and your nutrient accumulators in support of your main species. So you establish N fixators and nutrient accumulators. But as the trees become bigger, so your main productive species become bigger and they have a bigger impact on the soil organism, and you want to keep a bit of complexity in the system and to support their production, you can move away from some of this support function of these other species and use grazers to manage the system instead. Or if you want to maintain all that understory and not have it kind of impacted by grazers, you may still need to kind of mow it periodically yourself. You might want to go use tractor systems instead. So we'll explore how you can use these two different systems as the next kind of progression of a permaculture orchard. So how you can, as the trees get bigger, have grazers such as pigs, sheep, geese come into the system and manage the understory, and feed and browse on all the plant matter that might be in this grassy lane or in amongst these trees, and return the plant organic matter and back into the soil as manure. So manure is a way of pre-processing plant matter, inoculating it with all the beneficial microorganisms that are in the digestive tracts of these grazers, and creating a product that will be perfectly absorbed back into the soil to help build up the soil. Because often if you just cut a plant and you just leave it on the surface of the soil, a lot of the nutrients that are in the plant can oxidize up into the atmosphere instead of being returned back into the soil. So pre-processing it through a grazer is a great way of ensuring that as much of the nutrients contained in the plant matter will be put back into the soil and feed the soil microorganism community and build up the carbon in the soil. So they're a great way of managing the system, keeping it in mixed succession and returning the excess plant growth or production back into a soil-rich amendment or manure. So they return plant matter back to soil as manure. So, and tractor systems, as I said before, they allow you to kind of maintain that complexity intact without a grazer coming in and probably impacting your understory, which might not be a bad thing. You can kind of get rid of it because they come back seasonally. A lot of them, like comfrey, are seasonal plants, so they die back in winter anyway. So you might want to graze them midsummer in preparation for a fruit harvest and kind of just clear out that system a little bit. And it will regrow again in spring. All of your understory will regrow again and provide its beneficial support to your main crop species in spring, where it's kind of going through a period of growth. So you can process all of that excess plant matter through the grazers, return it back into the soil and improve it. Or you can leave it more intact and kind of control the boundary or the grazing range through an electric fence mesh, or just by fencing off these strips of orchard in your paddock, and that will stop them kind of accessing it and getting into it. But my preference is this system, and just kind of just being aware of the succession of a system. So just as it increases in maturity, how you can bring in these grazers and they can just fit in with the natural succession of this and just help with your management of it and just simplify it, and at the same time, get a harvest of pigs, sheep, geese, chickens, whatever it is. So you're not only just utilizing their function as a way to manage your orchard and fertilize your orchard through their manures, but you're also getting a beneficial product. So you're getting 3 beneficial functions from this element, which is what you should be always looking for in a permaculture design. So I quite like that system. But there are advantages to a chicken tractor system. There's examples maybe where it's not your own orchard and they want it managed in a certain way, and you're providing a service within your chicken tractor to manage the grass growth in the alleyways in between the orchards, to clean up the fallen fruit, to remove the pests from that fallen fruit, to fertilize the soil as you move through. So you might have a system where you have your chicken tractor, say, and it's a mobile, so you can load it up onto your trailer and move somewhere else with it and move it through someone else's orchard as a way to tie in with their production system, so that you can get your crop of chickens and eggs without actually having to own the land, just by tying in your production with someone else's production. So what the orchard structure might look like as it matures and you incorporate the grazers into that system as a way to manage the growth of the plant matter and the fertility of it as well, is having these strips of grass in between your productive rows of crops. You probably want to train the limbs of your productive species, so you can take their limbs in spring when they're a bit more supple is the best way to do it. So you can kind of bend them down more to a horizontal, and you can tie it down, or you can create little hooks that attach to the limb and attach to the main part of the trunk and just kind of hold it in place there. And over the initial spring period, they go through that stage of growth, and then you can often remove it after that, so you don't need it on the plant for a whole year, and as you go through the second seasonal growth, generally it won't change too much. It will kind of fix itself in that position, so you don't need to keep pruning and training it. But that will kind of create a shape where you bring down the branches to a level where you can harvest it easily, and it will be pruned from below by the grazers so that you can get a nice harvestable height. So you've got grass, which can be, your food for your grazers, and then you've got your other species in support of your trees. So they could be a heavily pruned support species, a nitrogen fixating plant, like maybe a tree lucerne, where you're pruning it back every year, mulching it, adding that mulch to the soil. But also, things like tree lucerne or other nitrogen fixating plants could be used as a forage for the grazers, so you can kind of manage their height, keep them in range for the grazers to browse on, but you can kind of prune them back yourself, mulch it, and then as it kind of regrows and you bring the grazers through, they can eat back all that regrowth, and it can be an alternative feed source for them too. Or it could be an additional productive species, or a nutrient accumulating seasonal plant like comfrey that will die off over winter, and you can just kind of mow it or graze it before that event to kind of to distribute that organic matter from the plant and put it back into the soil. So that's the kind of structure that your orchard may resemble as it matures.